Imagine you're an ordinary warrior from a small kingdom facing the strongest warriors from rival kingdoms. Can you handle the challenges? Our story begins with Max facing a fierce battle against Nora, the one known as the Virgin of War, who had killed a very large number of Max's fellow soldiers. If he had a powerful bow, he might have avoided their fate. Now he looks behind him and sees one of Nora's soldiers running toward him, intending to kill him. But Max grabs his bow and shoots an arrow into the soldier's head, knocking him off the horse. Max sees Nora with 7 soldiers from a distance and shoots 2 of the soldiers with his arrows. Nora gets angry and runs towards him at full speed. Max tries to stop her by throwing arrows at her, but with her strength, she splits every arrow in half. She approaches him. Then he throws down the sword in his hand and surrenders. After that, there's a battle going on between a kingdom called Borni and another kingdom called the Hecht. The battle takes place over a certain plateau. The number of Borni Kingdom soldiers is larger than the Hecht Kingdom. No one expected that they would lose in the end. We return to the hero Max, who is sitting with an old man named Zon, and the man criticizes him because despite the advancements the world has made, he is still using swords and the arrow. He tells him, "You're doing this because you're ignorant and can't use advanced weapons." He knocks him onto his back, and Zon is about to get up to attack Max, but he's stopped by the leader Mesa. After the fight, Max thanks Mesa for he intervenes in the matter, and Max discovers that all of this was actually a dream because he was arrested when he tried to attack Nora and her soldiers. Because of this, the kingdom of Zajat put a condition on Max. If it's not fulfilled within 5 years, they will take Max as a prisoner. And we find out that the ransom is that the kingdom of Zajat wants to take control of a region of the Borni kingdom, which is, of course, impossible. Max then approaches Nora and asks if it's possible to lower the ransom a little, but Nora refuses and tells him that if the ransom isn't fulfilled, he will be one of her men. After that, Nora tells him wants to see his skills in archery, so he goes out to the field. He can't shoot the arrows properly, and the people of the kingdom start mocking him. They say he's unfit for the Hecht, but Max is shocked when a stranger rushes in to harm Nora, but her helper Lim manages to block his strike with ease. Then the stranger tries to run to avoid being caught, but Max hits him with an arrow in his leg, causing him to fall to the ground, and Nora's men are able to capture him easily. We then learn that the title Maiden of War refers to the girl chosen to rule a specific area in the kingdom of the Hecht, and Nora is one of the girls, along with 7 others. We then go to Nora, who is fighting Max. She tells him that the potion they gave him was spoiled. They wanted to test his skills. She wondered if he was skilled at shooting arrows with a broken bow or not. Max was surprised and asked why she chose to test him in front of everyone. She said she admired his archery skills, and when people found out, they wanted to kill him, wondering how Nora could like someone as weak as Max. She had an idea to showcase Max's skills to the kingdom's people to convince them. We then learn that Nora admires Max because of his performance in a past battle. She tells him they could be friends, but on the battlefield, she would treat him like her soldiers. Max refuses, saying no one should treat a prisoner well. He also needs to return to the village of Zas to protect it, as it was inherited from his father and holds great sentimental value. Max goes to the place where the kingdom's soldiers eat and enjoys the food there. After finishing his meal, he trains diligently, and his skills are revealed when he shoots 3 arrows perfectly. At one point, while he's walking, he's suddenly attacked, but he realizes it's Nora's doing. When night comes, Max tries to sleep, but someone comes to inform him that someone from the Borni kingdom is coming and wants to see him. Max goes out and, an old man named Basso informs Max that the Doxina forces are heading to the Zas region. Max is shocked as it's his father's village. He asks Nora to let him leave immediately. At this point, we shift to the headquarters of Zon's father. The one who was mocking Max earlier is told by his father to go to the Zas village with 3,000 soldiers to destroy it. He also gives him giant beasts to ensure victory in the attack. Of course, Zon was overjoyed because he hates Max and was thrilled for this opportunity. Meanwhile, Max pleads with Nora to let him return to his village, warning her that a battle is about to happen there. But she refuses, calling him weak and reckless against the 3,000 soldiers coming. Nora warns Max, "If you try to leave, I'll kill you." Max thinks for a moment and asks to borrow her army. She's shocked and says, "You're a prisoner here, and you want our army?" The audacity. Nora laughs in disbelief. Nora agrees to give Max the army, but says nothing comes for free. When Max asks what she wants in return, she says she wants the entire Zas village under her control. Max agrees, but insists she must be a fair ruler and ensure the villagers' safety. Nora gathers her army and heads to the Zas village, joining them herself. Her army totals 1,000 soldiers, while the enemies have 3,000, making victory seem unlikely. The enemies arrive at the village with giant beasts. We learn that Zon's father wants to destroy the village because it's small and not important. Before the enemies arrive, the leader, Masa, instructs a woman named Tina to take the villagers to the church, as the enemies can't possibly reach it, ensuring their safety. Max heads to his house first to grab a quick meal. After all, he can't go to war on an empty stomach. Tina, worried about him, tries to stop him from going to the battle. Max insists he must go, saying he's responsible for the village after his late father. He mounts his horse, ready for war, as the villagers take shelter in the church. While the villagers are gathered in the church, terrified, Zahn stands on a high platform, commenting that he didn't expect the city to be so ancient. He wants to use the giant dragons, but his father had warned him to use them only for intimidation. Zahn grows frustrated because the villagers are hiding in the church, where he can't harm them. Looking ahead, he spots Max's mansion with Tina inside. He heads there and storms in. Tina confronts him, saying she won't let him destroy Max's home. Zahn smirks mockingly and tells her that the kingdom of Zajat has enslaved Max because his men couldn't pay the ransom. Zahn mocks Max, calling him a nobody. At that moment, Max arrives and shoots an arrow, severely injuring Zahn's hand. Zahn panics when he realizes the injury, especially as blood splatters on his face. Max orders Tina to jump off the balcony, promising to catch her. Tina jumps, and Nora uses her wind magic to make her land safely alongside Max. Max thanks Nora for her quick thinking, but she replies, "Don't think I did it for you. I did it because you're one of my men now, and I won't let anything happen to you." Nora then explains that her sword has the power to control the wind, and only a war maiden like her can wield it. Meanwhile, Tina is trembling in fear from her encounter with Zahn. Max comforts and reassures her. Suddenly, they are attacked by an arrow aimed to kill Max, but he swiftly catches it midair. Max catches the arrow with his hand and throws it back, impaling a soldier and pinning him to a tree. Unfortunately, Max sustains a minor injury to his hand, but it's just a superficial wound. He's shocked when his bow breaks. Confused about what to do, Tina steps in and gives him the bow his father left him before he died. A much stronger and ancient bow passed down for generations. Max prepares for battle against 3,000 enemies. Soon, we learn that 300 of the enemy soldiers have been defeated and some fled. This worries Nora because she knows the enemies will return stronger after regrouping. Nora's assistant Lim informs her that 100 of their soldiers have been surrounded, leaving their army with only 900. Max discovers the enemies are hiding in the Mulshim Valley. He and Nora decide to head there to crush them decisively. Meanwhile, Zahn, enraged by Max's approach, orders his soldiers to prepare, vowing revenge for his hand injury. His army is split into 3 groups. The first group, with 700 soldiers with Zahn. The second group consists of expert archers, and the third is made up of spear wielders. Zahn also plans to use dragons to intimidate Max and his forces, and Tina asks the villagers for any help they can offer for the battle, and most give her a large number of ropes. Lim sees their potential use in the fight. We know that Nora and her army's plan is for her and Max to be at the front to face the enemy. We see Nora pulling out her sword and preparing for the attack, while Max, with the new bow he has, is given a greater ability to fight. He can shoot 3 arrows at once, which obviously takes down a large number of enemies. As for Nora, she intervenes in the battle with her sword, cutting through the soldiers. Max is impressed by her sword skills. During the battle, Zahn's soldiers suddenly retreat, to the side. Nora and her army are shocked by a giant earth dragon. Zion's plan is for the spear soldiers to trap them while the dragon appears. Max attacks the dragon, but it has no effect, and then Zion shows up. He insults Max, telling him the dragon will crush them. However, the wind blows against expectations, and Nora's soldiers manage to break the trap and clear the way for Nora to defeat the dragon. She approaches the dragon and uses wind magic with greater force, sending the dragon flying and splitting it in 2. Everyone is shocked by her power, and Zion retreats. When Lim realizes Nora's strength, she takes her army and follows them. We learn that the ropes the villagers gave to Nora were used as a trap to hinder Zion's army. Most of Zion's army falls into this trap, thinking it's over, but Max says that now is the time for the second trap. Zion is surprised to see that Max's army has grown to 1,000, even though they were only about 500 before. How are they able to increase their numbers? One of Zion's men suggests using the winged dragon, but Zion gets angry, calling it a stupid idea since Nora already split the previous dragon. Zion decides to retreat, as there's no other option, and we learn that the second trap. Max's army was just spare horses with no riders. From a distance, Zahn mistook them for a full army charging at him, a brilliant tactic by Max. Zahn, realizing the trap, prepares to flee, only to see Nora and her army closing in on him. Max tells Zahn that his time to flee is over. Zahn tries to provoke Max, mocking him for relying on an enemy and her army to protect him, calling him a disgrace to the city of Born. Max firmly responds, shutting down Zahn's taunts. "This is all your fault. You made the villagers suffer, burned their homes, and stole their belongings like thieves. Now it's time for you to pay. Zion gets angry, challenges them to fight, and Max agrees. Zion mocks Max for relying on skill, but Max outsmarts him, blocking an arrow that hits his arm. Zion's army attacks Nora's, and they engage in a fierce battle. Zion then summons the winged dragon and flies off. Max struggles to control the dragon, but is surprised when a voice from the bow tells him to shoot an arrow at the dragon. Max prepares, only to find the arrow absorbs the wind power from Nora's sword, launching it fast. The arrow strikes the dragon, causing significant damage, and the dragon falls deep into the lake with Zion on it. Nora's amazed by Max's power. With Zion's death, his army lost its will, and they fled, making the village of Zez safe. After the war ends, Nora goes to Max's house and tells him she's returning to the kingdom of Zajat today. She asks what his plans are for the coming period. Then, Liam asks Nora why she trusts Max. Nora replies that, although he's a beginner, his skills in archery are very strong, which is what impresses her. After that, Max decides to go to the island of Hona to check the situation there, but Tina insists on going with him. Then we move to the kingdom of Zion, where Zion's father is upset that his army couldn't destroy Max's kingdom. A man named Galio comes to him and asks what he plans to do about Max and his maiden of war. He plans to eliminate Max using famous assassins and send another maiden to defeat her. Max visits Hona, where the residents say they are unharmed, having hidden in the forest, as ordered. Later, Nora is summoned to the royal capital of Zajat, where King Victor questions why she took her army to a major battle in Borni without informing anyone. Nora explains it was because Max, the ruler of Zez village, asked her to save his village. The king gets angry, accusing her of tarnishing their country's reputation to save his. Sophie intervenes to defend Nora and improve her standing with the king. Afterward, Nora leaves upset and encounters Mila, who criticizes her for acting recklessly and joining such a battle given her high status as a maiden of war. Nora argues back, but Sophie intervenes again to stop the fight. Nora thanks Sophie for defending her before the king. Mila leaves, and Sophie reveals Mila harbors a deep grudge against Nora and has close ties with her enemies, as a form of revenge against her. Max returned to his castle and is surprised to find Masa and Lin there. Masa is confused about why someone like Nora, one of their enemies, is at the castle. Max explains that she helped him in the previous battle, which eases Mesa's concerns. Mesa asks about Max's plans. Max reveals that he intends to eliminate Sia and Galo to ensure there are no threats to the village, allowing it to remain peaceful. Hearing this, Mesa then seeks the city leader's help, who agrees to support Max. Later, Nora informs Max of King Victor's demands. If Zaz village is to be protected, it must be handed over to Zagat's control, making it part of their kingdom. The king made it clear that Zagat's interests come first. For example, if a leader in Zagat allies with Sia, Nora would be obligated to defend Zagat and fight against Max if necessary. Nora also warns Max about Mila, who has close ties to his enemies and poses a major threat in the upcoming war. As they discuss this, Mila suddenly barges in without permission, angering Nora. Mila claims she's here to speak with Max and insists on taking him away from the castle for a private conversation. Suspicious, Nora and Lin secretly follow them. Mila tells Max that defeating Sia won't be easy, as Sia has strong allies outside the country. On their way, they fall into a trap, targeting Max. An unknown attacker shoots an arrow at him, but Max dodges and quickly kills the attacker by pinning him to a tree. Another enemy attacks Nora, but she swiftly slices him in half with her sword. During the chaos, Lin is bitten by a poisonous snake. Nora kills the snake. Max, desperate to save her, uses an old method to suck the poison out of her shoulder. As they tend to Lin, a large group of enemies ambushes them. Mila steps in, drawing her weapon and activating a powerful skill that wipes out all the enemies at once. After the fight, Mila decides to fetch a doctor for Lin. Max expresses his gratitude to Mila for her help in protecting them. The group returns to Nora's castle, and Lin's condition improves. Nora tells Lin she finds Mila's attitude odd, as her men seem overly loyal to her. Later, in the city, Mila spots a restaurant serving her favorite dish, but hesitates to buy it, thinking it's unbecoming of a war maiden. Nora, noticing this, buys the food for herself and eats alone, teasing Mila. Feeling bad, Max buys Mila the dish, annoying Nora, who warns him not to trust Mila too much and accuses her of being manipulative. Nora realizes Mila is preparing for battle and moves her forces to Litmar, effectively besieging Nora alongside Sia's forces. Sia plans to let Mila weaken Nora's forces before attacking. Nora starts preparing her army and heads toward Mila's location. Meanwhile, one of Mila's men suggests avoiding direct confrontation with Nora. However, Mila refuses, citing her family's long-standing alliance with Sia that has lasted over 80 years. She insists on maintaining her family's reputation. Nora and Max finally reach Mila, and the battle begins. Max leads an assault with his bow, and the war rages on through the first day, ending in a draw with heavy losses on both sides. Planning for the next battle, Nora devises a strategy to defeat Mila's army. Lin informs her that Mila's forces have retreated to the Tatra Mountains, where the terrain is treacherous and blocks army movements. Nora realizes her army can't breach Mila's defenses, nor can they retreat to Elis village as they're surrounded. Nora considers ambushing Mila's forces, but Lin warns her against taking such a risky approach. Instead, Nora comes up with a plan. Max will disguise himself as a polar bear and infiltrate Mila's camp. Max reluctantly agrees, and during his mission, encounters a real bear. He shoots an arrow at it, and the sound alerts Mila. Mila, puzzled, investigates the sound and is skeptical about the bear. To prove himself, Max shoots another arrow in her presence, making her realize it's him. Mila, impressed by his skills, apologizes for doubting him earlier. As they talk, Mila invites Max to join her army, admiring his abilities. Max declines, explaining that he is on an important mission and has to leave. During their conversation, Max discovers a hidden entrance to the kingdom. He quickly informs Nora, and together with her army, they march toward it. As soon as they arrived, they were shocked to find barriers in their way, almost as if Mila had prepared them in advance. Nora decided to clear the obstacles herself, using her powerful skill, the same one she used to split the dragon's body before. She unleashed her blade, obliterating the barriers and even breaking part of the entry gate. Just as she was about to strike the gate again to destroy it completely, Mila's army noticed her presence. Suddenly, a volley of arrows rained down on them. Max quickly intervened, pulling her to safety. He then borrowed the power of Nora's sword, striking the gate and breaking it open. Nora's army stormed through the gate, and now the clash between two war maidens was inevitable. The battle began immediately. Mila attacked with her weapon, but Nora skillfully dodged each strike. Frustrated, Mila unleashed an icy skill that trapped Nora in sharp ice. However, Nora drew her weapon and shattered the ice, leaping onto a nearby building to attack Mila from above. The battlefield was ablaze with their fierce energy. Max stood stunned, witnessing a war maiden duel for the first time. Suddenly, their skills collided, causing a massive explosion that sent both of them crashing to the ground. But they quickly recovered, ready to clash again, until a mysterious figure appeared, rushing in to kill Mila with his sword. Max acted swiftly, shooting the attacker from behind with an arrow, dropping him to the ground. Mila, surprised, realized Max was the one who had disguised himself as the bear. She scolded him for tricking her, but soon asked why he saved her. Max explained it was to repay her for saving him before. Touched, Mila calmed down, and Max asked her to ally with him. He admitted he had nothing to offer, but only wanted his village, Zas, to remain safe. Mila, moved by his sincerity and dedication to his people, announced loudly that she would withdraw from the civil war. She declared she would no longer support Commander Sia or act as a mediator between him and Nora. Max thanked her, and from that point on, Mila became a neutral party in the war. This brought some relief to Nora, who could now focus entirely on attacking Sia. Meanwhile, it was revealed that Sia had recruited a dangerous figure named Ronald, and then we see Ronald attacking soldiers from Zashtad and killing them, taking them down on his own, even though they're a large number. But he is one of the strongest knights of Brunei, and also the governor of the city of Nefrai. Months pass after the battle of Mila and Nora, and Maxi returns to the city of Brunei with 5,000 soldiers. Afterward, Maxi goes to the leader of the city to thank him for protecting his land, and the leader rewards him with a group of soldiers to help in the upcoming war. The next day, Maxi and Nora's army head to the Nemo region, an operational base they will use. That area originally belongs to Sia. Maxi then visits the capital's leader, who lives in an area full of beautiful scenery. While relaxing near a lake, two small creatures attack him, and then a line of war maidens arrives to take him. Sophie tells Maxi she has come to deliver a message from the king of Brunei. The message accuses Maxi of treason, and as a result, the king removes him from his position, lowers his rank, and takes the village of Zas from him. Max is shocked by what he heard, and Sophie tells him she came to warn him before Sama arrives. Maxi also learns that Ronald was sent by the king of Brunei to eliminate him. Ronald has now reached the plains of Anji to attack Maxi. At the same time, Maxi and his army arrive. Ronald commands his forces to attack, drawing his sword and cutting through soldiers. Nora also arrives and fights Ronald, blocking his strikes. Ronald is surprised by her strength since it's the first time anyone blocks his sword. He attacks Nora again, but she struggles to counter. Maxi intervenes and shoots an arrow at Ronald's head, but it misses. Ronald retaliates with his sword, wounding Maxie deeply in the abdomen. Maxie grabs Nora, pulls her onto his horse, and they flee, with Ronald chasing. Suddenly, one of Maxie's soldiers shoots Ronald's horse, paralyzing it. As Maxie rides away, Nora notices that Maxie is gravely wounded from Ronald's sword. Maxie can't continue. Nora looks back and sees a large number of Ronald's soldiers approaching. Sophie appears and tells Nora she'll handle them. Nora and Maxie flee, while Sophie draws her sword and fights. Sophie uses a magical skill to immobilize the soldiers. Ronald, enraged, calls her foolish for thinking such tricks could stop them. Sophie activates a shield, but Ronald easily breaks it and attacks her. He strikes violently, leaving Sophie unable to resist. She activates a skill and vanishes. Just then, a soldier informs Ronald that enemy reinforcements, 300 soldiers, have arrived. Commander Masa brought his troops to support Maxie in the war. Thanks to Mesa's attack, Ronald's soldiers are too preoccupied to pursue Nora and Maxie. The scene shifts to Maxie, who is severely weakened from his wound. Masa sits with Nora and the capital's leader, telling them that Sia and Galo have ruined the palace. He entered to check on the king and found him playing with blocks, oblivious, as if he'd gone mad after his son's death. The truth, Sia and Galo sent Ronald after Maxie, not the king. Nora asks Masa how he met Sophie. He says that, on his way back from the palace, he was ambushed by assassins, but Sophie appeared and killed them. They've been friends since. Later, Nora visits Maxie, who is unaware of anything. She holds his hand and promises to protect his soldiers, and Zas. Nora, Sophie, and the army prepare for another battle against Ronald. After a while, Maxie finally wakes up and finds the arrow still lodged in his hand, moving it carefully to help him stand. He leaves the fortress and meets Tina, who tells him that from now on, she will join him in all his future actions. He follows the glowing bow until he reaches a massive castle. Inside, he finds a woman named Tyr sitting regally on a huge throne. She is famously called the controller of the night. Maxie asks her what she wants from him and why she brought him to this place. She enters Tina's body to speak and explains that it wasn't her who summoned him, but his deep wish to gain her mystical power. She tells him that Nora and her brave army are now fighting a fierce battle. If Maxie wants her power to join the fight, he must pass her test by shooting an arrow at Tina without using excessive force. Maxie carefully aims his arrow at Tina, terrified it might harm her. He shoots, but Tina remains completely unharmed as he controls his strength with precision. Impressed by his accuracy, Tyr grants Maxie her great power, curious to see what he will achieve with it. Maxie then immediately heads to the battlefield. Meanwhile, Nora and her soldiers prepare a trap for the enemy by turning the battlefield into muddy terrain, using the surrounding lake's water to slow them down. The clever plan works very effectively. Nora engages in a fierce fight with Ronald, assisted by Sophie, who uses their combined skills to knock Ronald off the ground. He regains his strength and comments that the War Maidens are incredibly powerful, but he admires their unwavering determination more than their strength. Ronald approaches them boldly, vowing they'll pay for their bold actions. At that moment, Maxie suddenly arrives and shoots an arrow at Ronald from afar. Ronald stands firmly before Maxie, asking if the rumor about bringing Zahatid soldiers to defend Zas is true. Maxie calmly confirms it, and Nora explains their goal is to defeat Sia before finally returning home. She politely invites Ronald to help them, but he refuses because he serves Sia and cannot betray him. Ronald raises his powerful sword to attack, and Maxie notices his deep abdominal wound bleeding badly again. He realizes he has no choice but to resist fiercely. Ronald unleashes an overwhelming energy from his sword, causing a massive explosion that shakes the entire area. The energy leaves Ronald completely unable to lift his sword again. Admitting defeat, he falls heavily to the ground. Maxie suddenly faints from severe blood loss. With Ronald defeated, much of his loyal army is also overrun, giving Nora and Maxie's forces a rare chance to defeat Sia. Nora's fallen soldiers are solemnly buried. Ronald later sits with Maxie and promises to go to the royal palace to atone for his unprovoked attack. A messenger from Regan suddenly arrives with a message for Nora, revealing that a woman named Sasha, who rules Regan, is under a terrible attack. Under the War Maiden's sacred law, if one is in trouble, all must assist, even if there are unresolved conflicts. Sasha also has a chronic illness, preventing her from walking alone. Maxie kindly assures Nora to go without worry, promising to keep everything safe during her absence. Meanwhile, Ronald finally arrives at the royal palace, where Galo unexpectedly greets him instead of the king. Ronald is locked in a room and harshly scolded for failing to defeat Maxie. Suddenly, a large swarm of bees gathers around Ronald. We return to Nora, who is walking with Sophie, but decides to leave the soldier with Max in case of any attack. Later, Max informs them that Ronald is dead, and he's shocked to hear this tragic news. We then see Sia angry at Galeo, asking why he killed Ronald when they really needed him. Galeo calmly says, "Don't worry, he was just a scoundrel, and now he's gone." Nearby, there's a neighboring country to Borni called Mozini, known for still practicing brutal slavery. Its soldiers often attack neighbors, kill people, and loot valuable property. News arrives that 200,000 Mozini soldiers will attack the city of Borni. Sia splits his forces, half north, half south, and becomes eager to defeat Max with his 20,000 troops. Max learns this quickly and worries as his soldiers only number 2,000 against 200,000. Despite this, he bravely decides to attack. His army includes Gillard, a strong fighter who greatly helped Max win a previous battle. When Max arrives, he finds a young girl surrounded by Mozini soldiers. He quickly kills them all and rescues her. He then meets Gillard, who reports a severe resource shortage and that Mozini soldiers captured some of Max's men as slaves. The Mozini commander hears that 200 of Max's soldiers are approaching and quickly prepares 3,000 soldiers to attack. One of his men warns 3,000 is too much, but the commander insists it's a cunning trap and their real number is likely higher. The suspicion proves true as they face a much larger force from Max's army. Mozini soldiers panic at their overwhelming strength and retreat. Max celebrates their first great victory, and his troops collect arrows from the battlefield to reuse. The Mozini commander, furious over their humiliating defeat, gathers enslaved people from Borni and executes them. The second attack begins, and Max readies 300 skilled soldiers, vowing to atone for the deaths of Borni's innocent citizens. The Mozini commander orders his soldiers to attack, standing far back, confident no one can possibly harm him. But Max shoots a deadly arrow into his head, killing him instantly. The commander falls dead to the bloody ground. Mozini's soldiers flee after their commander dies, but Max's soldiers chase them, and Bass is impressed by Max's strength. Max then goes to the people enslaved by Mozini's soldiers. One of them gets angry and says, "You come now, after some of us were killed by Mozini's soldiers." Max can't respond, but apologizes. He moves the slaves, and we learn that Mozini's army retreated to a village called Jens due to heavy losses. Max's soldiers suffered no major losses. Bass then tells Max this was only the beginning, and Mozini's army has more than 40,000 soldiers. They'll surely attack again. Max gets nervous, feeling immense pressure. Max ensures the city's residents are safe. The next day, 4,000 Mozini soldiers attack Max's forces, and Max and his soldiers kill enemies with arrows, but their overwhelming numbers make it ineffective. Max is shocked when Mila arrives with a large group of soldiers as reinforcements. Meanwhile, Nora and Liam reach the kingdom of Regan and meet Sasha to figure out who has issues with whom. Sasha tells her she has issues with the Thunder Princess Regan. They used to fight together against pirates, but in their last battle, she filed a complaint accusing Sasha's soldiers of ordering pirates to attack Regan. Since then, Regan has been targeting Sasha, not understanding she can't defend herself. Nora promises to help her get justice. We then see the leader deciding to send reinforcements to the War Maiden. Before the second battle, Max sits with Mila, begging her to help him until the war ends since Nora isn't with him. Mila takes advantage of the situation, agreeing but demanding his powerful bow in return. Meanwhile, Thunder Princess Regan is informed by a soldier that Nora has 3,000 troops and is coming to attack her. Regan also prepares for battle. Sasha asks Lem to look after and protect Nora. We then see Nora's battle with Regan, who launches a powerful attack forcing Nora to step back. Regan tells her to withdraw if she can't handle the fight, but Nora responds with a much stronger attack that Regan blocks, knocking her to the ground. Nora gets up and strikes with her sword, clashing directly with Regan's counterattack. A huge explosion occurs, and Regan loses much of her strength. She asks Nora to stop fighting, but Nora refuses, wanting to kill her. Regan then tells her there are more important matters, like Saya and Gali preparing their armies to attack Nora and Max. Also, 40,000 Mozini soldiers are heading toward the city. There are indeed more important things than fighting Regan. Regan offers a peace treaty for a year, after which they'll fight again. Nora agrees, but if Regan apologizes to Sasha, sincerely. With that, Nora and Regan's battle ends, and Nora returns to the city, hoping Max is okay. Back to Mila and Max, where Mila tells Max they must capture Mozini's army in the next battle, because his soldiers are tired and can't fight anymore. Max learns that Mozini's commander this time is Shaheen, the brother of the king of Mozini. Shaheen is very strong, and we see him planning the attack on Max and his army. He's excited to see what they can do against him. One of his men arrives to report on the situation. He reports that Max's army is from Zakted and coming to help, with Mila and her army. Shaheen gets more excited for the battle. He orders his army to move. Max and Mila wait for the enemy to start the battle, known as the Battle of Ormia. Shaheen and his army arrive, and he orders them to try capturing Max's army as prisoners. We then go to Max's army. They're hiding on the second hill, and Shaheen's army thinks it's deserted. Max's army attacks the first wave of enemies. Before the battle begins, Max talks to the prisoners, ex-soldiers from Mausni's army, asking for their help in the next fight. Most refuse, but one stands up, saying they're weak and will lose, but they trust Max to protect them. Back to the battle, Max's army defeats the first and second waves of enemies. Shaheen orders reinforcements to be sent. Max is heading towards Shaheen's group. If it's wiped out, the battle ends, but after Shaheen calls reinforcements. A group surrounds Max and his army, taking down many of his soldiers. Max and Mila fight hard to defeat them. Max's hand trembles from all the arrows, but he tells Mila to rest while he handles it. Mila says they're too many, and he can't do it alone. Mila pulls her sword and fights, distracted by enemies. Suddenly, reinforcements arrive, over 7,000 soldiers led by strong commanders. Among them is August, who heard of Max from Ronald and was impressed by his strength, so he came to help. However, Shaheen isn't fazed by these reinforcements, as his army is much larger. The battle doesn't end there. Sasha and her army arrive, and Shaheen begins to panic, ordering his men to retreat and regroup. We learn that over 6,000 soldiers died in the battle. A soldier then informs Shaheen that Sia and his army are approaching the city. Shaheen realizes he can't continue. If he's defeated by Max, he'll be defeated by Sia. He decides to retreat entirely. Max is overjoyed when he hears this, but faints from exhaustion after the hard-fought battle. Nora and Liam reach Borny, where Nora apologizes to Commander Sasha for missing the last battle. The commanders who reinforced Max return to their posts after his thanks. Later, Max sits with Nora under the stars and apologizes for the soldiers from her army who died because of him. After defeating Musni's army, Max's troops settle in Birchy Forest. Nora becomes upset with Mila's presence and asks her to leave. Mila explains that King Victor assigned her to watch Nora, so she isn't leaving. Later, Commander Masa holds a meeting, revealing that King Rignus isn't dead, and the one who died was just a double. Then, a girl named Jean enters, asking to meet Max. Jean, whom Max once saved from enemies, shocks everyone by declaring she is King Rignus, disguised as a man all this time. Masa faints from shock upon hearing this. Jean explains that she was nearly killed. She was attacked by assassins hiding in the army, but saved when enemies killed them instantly. Nora asks why she disguised herself as a man. Rignus explains it was to protect her mother, since daughters are deemed useless in the kingdom, where sons dominate to claim the throne. Nora realizes that, as long as Rignus is alive, she will be an obstacle to their path. Max suggests meeting the king, her father, to tell him the truth. Sasha explains that when the king thought Rignus died, he lost his mind, so speaking to him now is impossible. Max asks Rignus for proof that she is the king's daughter. She reveals that in the city of Ulto, there's a secret royal door, known only to the king and his minister. Max decides to go there himself to confirm the truth. Meanwhile, Sia's soldier brings a large number of chained wild beasts to attack the war maidens. Sia learns that Rignus is alive, and Max is heading to Ulto to confirm her lineage. He decides to go there and kill Max and Rignus together. King Victor orders Sophie to abandon Nora and return to the kingdom since the wars have lasted over 6 months. We learn that the city of Ulto experienced a sudden fire, and the king urgently ordered people to leave their homes before they burned, caused by Sia destroying part of Galio's army after internal disagreements. Sia plans to take full control of the entire north, but Max doesn't care about those issues and decides to go to Ulto anyway. Max and the Ulto army carefully devise a solid plan to face Sia. Max's army now totals around 200,000 well-trained soldiers. Sia's army has 25,000 soldiers, and Max's army arrives for a fierce battle. Meanwhile, Nora and Mila join the fight, facing the beasts. They attack with their weapons, but nothing harms the creatures. Suddenly, one beast breathes fire, burning Nora's back, but Mila uses ice skills to block the flames successfully. Afterward, both armies retreat, planning a second battle. Max's team analyzes the first fight. Nora says the chains binding the beasts are stopping her from defeating them. Her skills no longer work, but she will find a way. She tells Max to leave the beast to her and Mila and focus on fighting Sia. 4 hours later, the armies prepare for battle again. Max's plan is to distract enemies, letting Nora and Mila attack the beasts. Max's army throws rocks at Sia's troops to divert attention. They then ambush them with arrows, piercing their heads. After a long fight, Nora prepares to kill the final beast, flying and slicing it into pieces. The Valkyries succeed in defeating the beasts, collapsing from exhaustion. Nora wishes for Max's victory over Saya. Max's army defeats part of Sia's forces in the second battle. The next morning, Max wakes up, while Nora and the others plan their next move. Max says they will head to Olto as planned, but avoid entering the city. Instead, they'll sneak underground into the palace to prove Regnus's lineage. Max asks Regnus about the tunnel's location. Regnus admits she's never been there, but using a map, points to the nearest entrance at the Moses Temple. Max decides to head there, but Basso warns him he can't stay after the war, urging Max to spend time with him and take him to the Moses Temple. Max agrees, but orders Basso to flee at the first sign of danger. Nora insists on joining since it's a risky mission. The next day, Max and his army reach Moses Temple. Regnus opens a small gate leading to the tunnel. She confirms Max was right, explaining the tunnel was built long ago to protect the royal family. After walking, they find a wall with strange dragon drawings. Regnus explains these depict ancient dragons. As Max and the others reach the cave, they're shocked to see Sia and his men. Sia says, "Finally, you've arrived." Sia reveals there are 3 paths to the cave and used one to get there. He tells Regnus her rumored death was false, but will make it true. Sia draws a sword and approaches Regnus, but Basso grabs her and escapes. Max fights Sia's soldiers, while Nora attacks Sia directly. A commander stood. Sia's right hand targets Max and declares he aims to kill him. And Regnus. Max shoots an arrow into Stud's arm, but Stud remains unfazed. Impressed, Stud acknowledges Max's skill with a bow. Despite the cave's darkness, Max shoots accurately. Sia tells Nora he chose this cave to ensure no one escapes. He swings his sword, knocking Nora down, but she rises, gathering her strength. The cave begins collapsing. Sia orders his army to retreat. Max commands his group to exit before the cave collapses. Max continues fighting Stead, refusing to leave until he's defeated, but the cave collapses entirely with Max inside. He regains consciousness to find Stead lying near a rock with a staff. Checking on his companions, Max discovers Basso bleeding out. Basso, near death, tells Max he's relieved he's safe. He reminisces about watching Max grow from a child into a leader, bringing peace to Zaz village, and urges Max to protect the rest of the world. He entrusts Tina to Max before passing away. Meanwhile, Nora and Regnus make their way toward the cave from above ground. Upon reaching the cave, they find Max collapsed and Basso in critical condition. Max sits devastated by Basso's tragic and untimely death. He reveals that his bow's skill cleared the rocks trapping him. While lost in thought, Nora enters and asks about his next steps. Max says he'll postpone everything until tomorrow to mourn Basso. Nora firmly insists she'll move forward herself if he delays. When Max asks her plan, she declares she must keep fighting to preserve her pride and prove her strength. She recounts her past as a fearless warrior without a home, always seeking battles, even when comrades fell, showing no hesitation to avoid losing. Her words deeply inspire Max, pulling him out of his grief and renewing his unwavering resolve for the journey ahead. Max approaches Tina, reassuring her the war will soon end and they'll return to Alsace. He promises a grand funeral to honor Basso, dedicating a day to preserve his legacy. Nora advises Max that battles aren't the only way to win wars. Max realizes he can construct a road connecting the capital to Alsace, ensuring prosperity for the village. Nora adds that war impacts resources and land beyond destruction, and Max can strategically leverage these to gain territories for Alsace's future prominence. The next day, Max and Regnus visit Prime Minister Barry, who is astounded to see Regnus alive. Barry asks about King Born's condition, and Max explains that Galeo managed to restore him. Barry then inquires about Max's future plans. Max declares his intent to defeat Sia, make Alsace safe, and, if necessary, align it with the kingdom of Zahicht. Barry stresses the importance of taking Regnus to Nice to see her father before he passes. Max explains that's impossible now, as Sia will interfere, making it crucial to deal with him first. A fierce battle between Max's army and Sia's forces begins, setting the stage for their decisive confrontation. Regnus wants to join the battle, but Masa reminds her they're doing everything to keep her safe until she reaches the kingdom. Masa notices Sia's army attacking in a disorganized manner because their strategist is dead. Meanwhile, Max, Nora, and Mila advance towards Sia. This is the first time Max faces Sia directly. Max demands to know why Sia attacked Alsace. Sia explains that controlling Alsace allows domination of Zahicht. He plans to burn Zahicht and destroy its people out of hatred. Max prepares to strike, declaring he must avenge Ronald's death. With fury, he draws an arrow, ready to attack. Nora stops Max, warning him not to let revenge cloud his judgment. Max discards his other arrows, relying on a single shot. As Sia charges toward Max, claiming he'll show strength, Max releases the arrow. It strikes Sia in the forehead, sending him plummeting from the fortress. At last, Sia meets his end. We learn that Max used Nora's Windblade ability to guide his arrow precisely to Sia's forehead. Afterward, a grand celebration is held for Max in the city of Borny, honoring his achievements. Riding in a carriage beside Regnus and dressed formally, Max looks different than usual. Nora feels jealous, wishing she were the one sitting beside him. It's clear she has fallen for Max. Later, Max and his companions visit Regnus's father, the king, where they also find Sophie present. The king apologizes to Regnus for burdening her with responsibilities that should have been his. The king thanks Max for his efforts and asks how he can reward him. Max makes 4 requests. Borny will provide Zayicht with 50,000 gold coins for their support. Borny will cover all losses incurred by Zayicht. Borny will cede Regnus's land to Zayicht. Borny will appoint Regnus as its next queen, as the king's life is nearing its end. The king agrees, naming Regnus the future queen of Borny and rewarding Max with the title of Knight of the Moon's Light. This title fills Max with pride. A few days later, the king passes away. Alsace thrives in peace. Nora establishes a trade route using Regnus's land and reflects on how meeting Max changed her life. Everyone lives happily and peacefully. And with that, our anime concludes. Please subscribe and like the video.